can't see your whole face.
You can't see me?
Is it change the orient?
Yeah, I like until here. That's not very attractive.
Oh. Do I need to flip my thing the other way?
Yeah. No, that's great. Right there.
Okay.
All right.
But can you see Devin the whole way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we're recorded, right? Yep. Awesome. All right. So in 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, Mario here with the Plant Nerd Podcast, and I'm with Kata, the queen of perennials, Devin, the dawn of the fall annuals, and Michelle, the millennial makeover maven. This is the Plant Nerd Podcast. What is growing on, everybody? So, Kata, you start. What is growing on with you? I know you're all over the world. Tell us what you've been seeing. What's been going on? What's been growing on?
Yeah, it was a really exciting last month. I counted, I was in 7 different states within 4 weeks. Part of my job, but I did go to one of my absolute highlights. I went to the Highline in New York 2 weeks ago. It has been on my bucket list forever, and it was just so magical. It was pouring rain. There was nobody. I got a tour of the guy that managed the whole project formally and designed a lot of the things. It was absolutely fantastic. And as you can imagine, if you've ever seen pictures of the Highline, grasses are in its peak. So all the perennial grasses just look so good. I posted a bunch of pictures. Yeah.
What was the grass that spoke to you?
You know, it's actually funny because I think the person didn't want to hear that, but Calamagrostis brachytricha was actually really everywhere. It's a Korean diamond grass, I think. It got a little out of hand, but the blooms with the rain, it was just magical. I posted a bunch of pictures. It looks really, really cool. Probably needs to be managed a little bit. It's a little seedy. Took a little over, but it was still really cool looking.
That's awesome. One of my favorites, and maybe if they don't have it anymore, they did. I don't know how it did, but it was the Pennsylvania Carex, the Carex Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's a perennial line. I love that.
It was really cool. It actually, it did really, really well. I still think that, now in the last 10 years, that the Highline has really grown in. The Ebernia, Carex Ebernia, definitely strikes me better. It looks more lush, a little bit more ornamental. So that one has really, in my list of favorite grasses and Carex, it kind of took the start to the top.
Yeah, I think we need to take Plant Nerd Podcast on a tour of some of these spaces because that
right.
Yeah. All right, Devin, what's going on? Where are you?
So I'm today out here at Mobley Plant Farm. You can see all these beautiful violas behind me. I was out here on Tuesday and was like, oh my gosh, fall is here. I mean, here in Atlanta, fall's kind of starting to get in the air. This weekend, we're going to get some really cool weather coming through. So now is the perfect time to get pansies and violas in the ground. You want to get them rooted before it gets cold. And man, you can just see this ocean of color behind me. It is awesome. So it's pansy and viola season, mum season as well. We've got our first shipment of mums in at Surfscape, and then also at the nursery. Man, shrubs. We have been slammed. So, I mean, fall is here in the garden center. It is planting season. Everybody is out planting. It is awesome.
What's the color that you're most excited about right now? What's next to you?
Right here, this is going to be, let's see, this is Viola Penny Blue, which is one of my favorite violas, but I'm excited here. It's in a different house, and I'm actually going to get me 2 trays for my mom's house, but it's the My Monet mix. It's so pretty. It's such a pretty pastel-y color mix of pansy. It is awesome.
I always have to laugh so much. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm from Austria, and so we use pansies and violas exclusively in cemeteries. And so when I moved here and my husband planted all those pansies and violas in fall, I was like, my house looks like a cemetery. And he was like, that's pretty. It's really Halloween. And he didn't believe me. My dad came to visit, and the first comment he made was like, the house looks like a cemetery.
That's hilarious. Are they perennials there, Kata? Since it's cooler?
Yeah, for the most part, especially the violas more so than the pansies. But yeah, she'll love it.
Yeah.
Now everybody's going out buying mums now. I mean, and I know that every mom has killed a mum. And so for everybody out there, like, how do you kind of withstand the whole season? What kind of care is required?
For mums, I mean, when they're in the pots, you've really got to make sure you keep them watered. And when you water them, you want to make sure you don't water over the top of the flowers. You really want to, if you have a watering wand, you want to take the end off and stick the hose underneath the foliage and get it right in the pot to try not to get those flowers wet. Or you can just dunk it in a 5-gallon bucket to water it just to keep those flowers dry, because if you get those flowers and buds wet, it tends to cause them to rot out and they'll turn brown. So, and one thing that drives me crazy about people is when you're done with your mums and they're done blooming, you can plant them in the ground. They're a perennial. So plant them in the ground and they'll come back every single year.
Right.
It does.
It drives me insane.
They'll send out, how does that root structure work? Because I've seen them just really kind of scatter about and
Thread,
really over a whole area, really colonize well. I mean, I don't know. I mean, any plant nerd out there is going to tell me like how their root zones, how their root growth really is enabled, or
yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to spread out and form a clump of, I mean, how big would you say they get, Kata? I mean, it depends on the variety, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think with mums, there's so many different ones. I think if you really like want a really, really nice mum in your garden, I would really go for something that is bred to be a garden mum and not one of those Halloween, basket mums, like those balls. But yeah, I think that most of them are a nice 2-3 feet wide, same height. So
back at bed, because they bloom in the fall. So, you plant some lower blooming spring and summer stuff in front of it.
All right, I'm sure we're going to talk more about fall color and fall plantings, but for the Millennial Makeover Maven, Michelle, what is growing on?
So I am, like Devin said, focused on adding shrubs to the garden right now. The weather has been amazing. So I've been doing a lot of sheet mulching. We have a lot of lawn and I'm trying to slowly take it back little by little so that the kids still have their spot to play, but mama has to have a spot to play too. So adding lots of things.
Awesome.
That's my favorite way to make beds bigger. When I get up here in Atlanta at my parents' house, it was just every single year I'd make the beds just a little bit bigger, just a little bit bigger.
Exactly.
Well, I got some more plants I need to find room for, so I'm going to just blow this bed out a little bit here and plant them right here.
Move the edge.
Canopy, right? We have these canopies that are growing every year, and they're taking over that lawn space. And then what happens is that lawn is struggling, and so you say, okay, let's carve out the visual liability, if you will, and then let's make that the next great shrub asset. So that's one of the design little, So tell us more. You just got back from vacation. You saw some land.
For work, it wasn't really vacation, but I went to India and got to see, where our indoor house plants really thrive there. So it's a tropical climate. So, my little rubber tree that barely likes to survive in my house was a giant, like 30, 40-foot tree in India. So it was great seeing them in their natural habitat.
I loved your pictures. They looked so cool.
Yeah, they were amazing. They were really, really cool.
And any other plant that really spoke to you while you were there?
One thing that they did, and I don't know the name of the plant, but I'll have to do the plant lookup on an iPhone, which I love that feature, the plant ID, when you go to pictures. They would use ground covers right above a retaining wall, and it would spill over, and then they would kind of put a tiny little trellis system, and it looked like shrubs. So it looked just like an evergreen boxwood shrub, but really it was like a ground cover that had spilled over a support, so cool. And they would just train it like that. So I'll post some more pictures about and look up what exactly that was, but I thought that was really clever.
Well, that's awesome. One of the things that we got going on over in my neck of the woods, we're in Chamblee, right outside of Atlanta. We are desperate. We have a new subdivision or whatever. We're desperate for an entrance planting. We have just the builder grade stuff. So I'm going to get some of those pansies right behind Devin.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go out. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right. But of course, the labor in this is all the neighbors. And, being a landscape architect, I really like set the scene. But how quickly do I find my place in this world when all the neighbors get in there and it becomes more of a democratic design decision? We will see what happens. But such is the way of the world sometimes. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, we're going to jump into the Plant Nerd AI. We're going to hear some of the best questions from the last couple of weeks. We really think this is an awesome opportunity just to share with everybody what everybody's asking about, what ways in which the Plant Nerd AI is going to answer, and then how we can kind of expound upon those types of answers. So, James, let's hit it. Let's hear the first one.
What can I plant in my yard this fall that will be low maintenance through the winter?
So Daniel from Atlanta asks, what can he plant through the winter that is going to thrive, right?
It's going to be low maintenance.
Low maintenance. Now, in Atlanta, we had a historic freeze. Everybody's really concentrating on, okay, will this survive the next freeze? I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm telling clients every other day, or especially when they're asking me these questions, is that we probably are going to over-index to plan for the next freeze when really we got to plan for the next heat. There's much more likely an opportunity for a plant to die for the next historic heat than the next historic freeze. Of course, watch, we have another 20-year freeze. But at the same time, I really do think that everybody's overemphasizing this next freeze that probably not going to happen, and the next heat wave is going to be more detrimental. But to that end, anybody have any suggestions on low maintenance and something that's going to survive for this winter?
Violas and pansies. Right here.
I think, especially, what's the question also like a ground cover? Did I make that up in my head?
I think you can throw that in there.
I know.
Well, one of the plants that I think is the most low maintenance, really stunning, takes all the heat, takes all the freezes, is Carex Everillo, the yellow Carex. It is so easy. You don't have to do anything with it. Every 5 years, if there is a historic freeze and it gets brown, like you can shear it back. It just flushes back out.
It's even prettier.
It's so pretty.
And all of us have this like dark corner in our garden where nothing else really grows. And it brightens up this dark spot underneath trees or shrubs. No weeds can go in. It's my 100% best plant for low maintenance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that chartreuse color and all those things really make your kind of standard green more vibrant too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I found that also just throwing more stuff in there with that, because I've been using it a lot lately, is using it more sparingly. Like before, I would put in these giant masses of them, which was fine, but I think you lose a little bit of the wow on it. It's too much. It's really more of an accent, not really the body. It's really more of a little feature.
In my woodland garden at home, in the path along in the woods, I've kind of done like peppering along the path on either side, like 3 here, 5 here, 3 here, kind of throughout the whole path instead of just a mass planting, just to give you pop the color as you walk along.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
Anybody else have a low maintenance winter?
I feel like, I don't know, and maybe this is regional specific, but I feel like my azaleas did really well even through the freeze. And they're just gorgeous this time of year. So maybe that's also why it's coming to mind. But especially some of the compact varieties, if you're looking for, your foundation planting and you're worried about, planting something that'll eventually get so tall that you're constantly having to prune it down and shear it back. Those, smaller compact varieties have done really well for me.
Yeah, the Encore varieties and
Encore,
the PW
Autumn, and Angel.
The Perfecta Mundos. I've been really happy with those. I planted some of them in my yard, and they're starting to bloom again. So I'm a huge fan of Perfecta Mundos. So
yeah, the double pink, I think it is, the light pink one.
Yeah, it's really pretty. I like the white one too. Another low maintenance perennial I like is Dianthus as well. It does great through the winter. It'll stay green, and down in Florida, it was like, I don't know, above 95 degrees for 2 months, and my Dianthus was blooming all summer long and looks great right now. So I've become a big fan of Dianthus. I used to not like it, but after seeing it perform this summer through the heat, I'm like, okay, this thing This thing's worth it.
I think
What's your favorite variety?
Sorry.
I have pink tinkle, and I'm a big fan of that one.
I'm gonna have to Google that one. Pink tinkle. What a name.
I think that also with dianthus, just as I work for somebody who does a lot of breeding, the breeding work has just come such a long way. Like all those old varieties, they didn't perform very well in the South. And, if you had them in front of a sprinkler, they got brown so quickly. But like some of the new breeding work has been outstanding. We sell, for example, Paint the Town Magenta or the Paint the Town series. And I always on a regular basis go to trial gardens in the South. There's a big one in Charlotte at the Metrolina Gardens. And it's so nice to see how a lot of the dianthus have really gotten so much better for the South.
Yeah. Fire Witch is my favorite just because that blue-green. It's really hard to find that color. And I always have a trail over a pot or a rock or something like that. And it'll give those little runners.
See, Mario, we have to hook you up with some new varieties. That
was
exactly the one I was thinking about. Sorry.
Sorry, my plant nerdery needs some work.
This is what we're here for, right?
That's so let's move on to the next question. Let's see what else. Go for it.
Jill from Roswell asks, my plants just got destroyed by deer and other pests. What can I do to keep this from happening again?
Plants and deer,
never-ending story.
So we can go on for days about plants and deer. I'm trying to think of what are the new. Well, one of the frameworks to think about this problem too is we have biological attacks or biological treatments. We have chemical, and then we have mechanical. So if we look at how can we prevent deer on plants through those three lenses: biological, mechanical, and chemical? Anybody want to share, within that context?
Build a fence.
Build a fence. Okay. Yeah, that's the mechanical.
Yeah.
I've also heard of people, and I don't know how effective this is, but they will get like a coyote statue, or the blinking lights I've seen sold. My dad swears by the blinking lights, but according to him, you have to move the lights from time to time because the deer will figure out that it's just lights. So he will move them every once in a while. But yeah, if you can fence or do something to spook or startle them.
Yeah, the deer have unfortunately found my yard. I, kind of live out in the woods, and I thought, I can't believe there's no deer. There haven't been deer there for like 2 years, but they just cleared a big piece of property not far from me, and I guess pushed them out of their home. And they found a very tasty yard with lots of hydrangeas and a big vegetable garden. So, one thing I've been using is Milorganite. It's a great fertilizer. It's kind of gross. It's made out of composted sewage, but it smells like humans. So don't use it in your vegetable garden. You can use it around it. But that's helped keep the deer away. Coyote urine is a good repellent that you can use. I'm not big on any chemicals, but like any stuff like that is really good to use.
I actually, my grandparents in Austria, very avid gardeners and farmers, they always went to the hairdresser and got all the hair.
Yep.
And sprinkled the hair around. Actually, it's super cheap because most hairdressers will just give that to you. Yeah. And you just sprinkle human hair around your garden. But I think ultimately, if you really have a bad deer problem, choosing plants that they don't like as much is really what you have to go for.
Yeah. And you can also plant some plants kind of like if you have a hydrangea that you like. I mean, I do not recommend hosta at all. They're going to find it and eat it down to nothing. But hydrangeas and stuff like that, you can plant I found if you plant society garlic, that garlicky smell they really don't like. So you could use other plants to plant around plants that deer eat to kind of be a natural repellent that's just there all the time. Lavender works too. Rosemary they don't like.
Cinnamon,
mint.
Salvia.
So, you could also use another plant to help keep them away from plants that they like as well.
Yeah.
And one thing that works really good that's not so PC is when it's dark out, go outside and pee in your yard. That's what I do.
Works for me.
So let me tell you where we're not going to go on location.
Just don't come at night. It's fine.
All right. With that, we're going to move on to the next question.
William from Atlanta asks, what trees can I plant that will grow quickly to give my yard a better look?
Okay. What fast-growing plants, trees to give the yard a better look? And if I had to dive deeper into the question, give a better look, maybe it's not the traditional fast-growing tree or the arborvitae or the, or maybe there's a newer varieties that we could talk about that's not evergreen giant, I think that's maybe too kind of played out for a lot of folks. So what's a fast-growing, good-looking for folks in the South? Anybody want to take it?
I mean, one of my favorites is any maple tree. Maples are good, fast-growing trees. They're a hardwood. Even though they're fast-growing, they are a pretty strong tree, so they'll hold up to our thunderstorms and everything down here. So when anyone's looking for a tree, I always recommend maples. If they don't want like a full-size maple, Japanese maples are another great option, like bloodgood or coral bark, because they think Japanese maples stay small, but bloodgood and coral bark will get about 20 to 25 feet tall and about 15 feet wide. So for a lot of yards, that's all you need.
Yep. I'm a huge fan of red buds. They come in, they're moderately growing. I don't know if they're super fast, but they bloom and they have beautiful foliage. I love the heart-shaped leaves. And I think a lot of the varieties are native. So if you're looking to plant native, there's Eastern redbud.
See, you introduced me as the perennial queen, and that's what I'm gonna stick with. I'm just not much of a tree person. I can tell you, the one tree that I planted was the sweet tea olive tree,
Yes.
right? Definitely not fast growing, but just I think having that smell and
right, this time of year too.
Mine is not even that big, but it was reasonably priced, to be honest. And I just put it in the front of the yard, and it still like gave it structure, even if it's not that huge yet. So, but yeah.
One of the plants that we've been playing with a lot lately, especially in some like wet areas, drainage areas, rain gardens, dry creeks, the summerific hibiscus series. They're taking off beautiful blooms even as a young plant. Obviously, I know hibiscus, but the summerifics have just had some blooms even at an early age that really bring a lot of joy to the customers because they just love to see that big bloom, that instant sort of awesome. And they're really taking off. I mean, they're getting 18, 24 inches a year.
And it's actually interesting. I don't know. Most people don't realize that, but there is a lot of different colors and shapes. And most people don't really understand the difference in the name and how it can actually tell you which shape it will have. So if the word crush is in the name of the summerific, so like Valentine crush, lilac crush, candy crush, that means it's a very upright summerific hibiscus. And if it doesn't have the name crush, it is more of a like rounded one. So
I didn't know that.
Oh.
Crush taller, longer.
Yeah. And the other ones are just more, this gum ball. Yep.
Hey, and the summerific hibiscus are deer resistant because I have been replacing all my tropical hibiscus in my yard with those.
There you go. So you got your fast growing deer resistant. I love it. Last question, and we'll wrap it up.
Brittany from Smyrna asks, I grow my garden in my apartment's common area with very limited sunlight. How can I make the most of this situation?
How can I make the most of a situation? What was it? Apartment garden, lot of shade. All right. Apartment, just to kind of diagnose the problem a little bit. When you're talking about apartment, you're talking about high traffic areas. You're talking about stuff that, you might have the maintenance guy come by and not really treat it as well as you would like. And, you don't have the deer problem per se, so that's out. But you probably have a lot of what I found is a lot of like root competition. They probably already planted the maples. So you're always kind of working within existing landscape, existing root structures. So right off the bat, I'm already thinking about nutrification and, making sure that whatever you grow has a good soil base, because again, if it's an older apartment, you're dealing with a lot of competition from previous stuff. So bringing in that compost, bringing in the worm castings, depends on what you're planting. But right off the bat, I think that gets you into a situation where you're going to do well. Or plant suggestions, y'all. What are y'all thinking?
I personally love shade gardening. It's one of my favorites. And I had a spot at my parents' yard on the side of their house where there's a silver maple, and silver maple's roots are literally impossible to dig through. So what I did is containers. Containers are awesome. You can do a bunch of grouping of containers out there, different colors, different sizes, and then that enables you to plant right in those containers ferns, hosta, heucheras, K-rex, all kinds of beautiful things. You could even put some camellias if you want to do some shrubs in pots. But when you get that root mat down there, it's really hard to get stuff to grow when it's competing with those trees. So I love pots.
I can only second that. I think that's one of the best ideas to really deal with established root bound problems. If she doesn't have even that root bound problem, though, like let's say there isn't any trees and it's just a shady area, I mean, there is fantastic shade plants. And if you are in an apartment complex, it's very likely you don't have a deer problem. So you can actually go bazinga with all those hostas and all the things that deer actually like. So I think there's so many different hostas that can even be paired together well, or pulmonarias, heucheras, so many great ferns and different like shapes that you can use. The heucheras especially, there's so many colors. It doesn't really matter if you have flowers or not.
Any varieties you're most interested in now for the heucheras? Ooh.
Oh, there he goes. Look at that.
Which love this one. This one is citronelle.
Citronelle.
It's an old school one, but I love its color. Berry smoothie is another really awesome one too.
I see, and then on the citronelle color, there is a new one called Lemon Love that is really, really nice for the south because it doesn't burn as easy. So if you do have more of a parchate area, I would probably go away from either chartreuse or take one of the newer ones. I absolutely love wild berry. It literally has the color of my shirt. This amazing purple. I think it's a year-round color that works. So that's my top.
Yeah.
Michelle, any ideas?
I love the idea of doing just a hosta, like you said, lungwort. That's one of my favorite perennials that I've planted in the shade because of that silver color. I actually really tried to keep Brunnera alive, but have not done a great job of that. I love silver in shady spots and like that all silver leaf. I wanna keep it alive. I have not had any luck, but yeah, I love the idea of a beautiful shady garden that's just a mix of foliage colors.
Well, that's amazing. So in closing, we're going to wrap it up. This has been the Plant Nerd Podcast. So for Kata, the queen of perennials, for Devin, the Don of the fall annuals over there on location today, and Michelle, the millennial makeover maven. I'm Mario. I'm your host of the Plant Nerd Podcast. We're so glad you're here. We will catch you next week where we dive into more fall favorites and a lot of ways in which we can plant joy with you. So thank you, everybody. See ya. Plant joy.